RedYume here, doing BJD Addict prompt number 21, Supernatural. For those of you that haven't met her, this is Elune. She is a with doll dark elf Angela, and as you can see, she kind of has a makeshift dress and makeshift feather wig going on. I promised myself I wasn't going to do any dolly crafts until I got all of my commissions done for cosplay, and I still have quite a long list, but I couldn't leave her bald and naked, so now she is not bald and not naked, and I'm not doing any more until the commissions are done. So, supernatural occurrences. I don't have any. I have never thought that my dolls have got up and moved around, or my stuffed animals, or my forks, or my knives, or my spoons, or my plates, or anything else. Generally, if something moves from where I leave it, either somebody else moved it, or I forgot that I moved it. A lot of people think that dolls are creepy, and I think that actually comes from that they do have human faces. You don't hear about the stuffed bunny that got up and moved across the room late at night to, murder its owner in its sleep, and that's because a bunny doesn't look like a human, and I think there's a perception in the human mind where if it looks like a human, then it has to have some sort of cognizance, some sort of consciousness, and that unsettles us because it's human but it's not human. So where exactly does that lie? Which brings up an interesting point of perceived existence. Clearly, Elune here exists. She physically exists in the real world. However, she is a lump of resin and therefore only exists insofar as to whatever I project onto her. And I think that we do project a lot onto our dolls. We project, well, first of all, we give them names, we give them backstories, we give them an existence, and in this existence it is the perceived sense of soul. And I mean that purely in the creative way. It is something that we project onto inanimate objects, that, we impart personality, we impart likes and dislikes. And I mean, how many times it's like, oh, I wanted to call the doll this, but he or she arrived and said that that wasn't what their name was supposed to be, so now everything has to change. Or I bought this doll to be this character, and then it got here and was like, nope, that's not me, that's not my story, that's somebody else's. And even though the doll hasn't actually said anything, there is this perception that it has an opinion. And that's not wrong. We do that from when we're very, very young. It's a natural, normal human thing. We have imaginary friends growing up, and then we have favorite stuffed animals, and oh no, don't put my favorite teddy bear in the box. He can't breathe in there. I mean, as children, that's something normal, and I think that as we grow up, that turns into two things. I think it turns into our imaginative process, where rather than needing to have a physical representation of a favorite stuffed toy or a favorite doll, it all goes up here. And we can start creating characters that don't need any physical representation, and they also don't need to be invisible. They're just creations purely of our mind. And in being purely of our mind, it does lend a certain sense of existence to it. In our heads, there are other worlds, and there are other storylines, and there's these adventures and these plots, and it all kind of rolls along. And you go, oh, it's not real. And yeah, okay, in the absolute sense, it definitely isn't real. Even though I think most of us realize that these dolls, they can't be happy or sad, and they can't feel pain or form an opinion of their own, I think that that's something we don't necessarily leave behind as kids, as we get older. And I don't think it's something that we should leave behind. I think it shows a very well-developed sense of empathy. Not just empathy for other people or just empathy for animals, but empathy and responsibility to take care of everything that's around us, whether it is, a pet cat, a pet dog, heirlooms that we inherit from other people, gifts we receive, just taking care of things that belong to us, as well as friends and maintaining relationships. It's all interconnected in my view. With BJDs, I think we do this in two ways. The first is that we impart personality and backstory to them, which gives them a perceived sense of existence. And then the second is when you see or when you hear about a doll being broken, a finger breaks off, a faceplate breaks. I mean, even though we know they can't feel pain, there is a certain sense of injury. We look at it as an injury rather than a, dude, the toy broke, that sucks. And I don't think it just has to do with cost. I think it has to do with an emotional attachment to some degree to these collectibles, however you want to put it. I think that there is a certain sense of, ouch, he broke his hand. Likewise, when we see a doll being mistreated, and that means different things to different people, but any sense of, dolly abuse, there is a certain sense of, wow, that really sucks. Or when you get a damaged doll or a really, really dirty doll in the mail, you're just like, oh, poor thing, here, let me make it better. Which is kind of, if you really think about it, a little bit odd, because they are inanimate objects. But again, there is that emotional response, that empathetic response to, here, let me make it better. So I think when a lot of people say that dolls are creepy, I think that it's actually this perceived existence that they're talking about. This is this residual, empathetic feeling that even though they're not real, there's something about them that just is human enough to be creepy. And I think that lets the imagination kind of spin off and be like, oh, did it move? Is it looking at me? Oh, I don't know. And, could there be possessed dolls and things moving around that I don't know about? Well, of course there could be, because I don't know everything. But for me, it's not about it being creepy. For me, it's really more the creative, projected personality onto these dolls, and all the creativity and the time and the effort that goes into making their backstories and their face-ups and their clothes and everything else. I think that it's a really wonderful process and a really wonderful thing to give them this projected existence and in its own way a soul. And if you want to laugh about it, then that's cool. You can blame movies like The Brave Little Toaster and Toy Story. We'll blame the media, that's grand. But that's just kind of what it is for me. I think that it's wonderful to have the embodiment of something in an inanimate object. It shows that as an adult, you don't have to shut your imagination down, and you can take it any direction that you want to. And I feel bad for people who don't invest into their imagination, that do leave that behind with childhood, not because they're any stranger than I am, but because I feel like they've left a piece of themselves behind. They've become mundane. I kind of get the same feeling when you go, oh, what do you like to read? And they go, I don't read. What do you mean you don't read? I don't read. I read magazines. I read articles. I read whatever. It's like, that's it. That's as far as your existence goes. Do you dream anymore? And I guess I really got off topic here, but it was kind of off topic to begin with. But yeah, I think that the supernatural part of our dolls, if there's a supernatural part to be had, is in their backstories and in how we project emotion and a sense of self onto them. And I think that is really otherworldly, and I think that is really special. And that's just kind of my view on it. And if they ever get up and walk across the room, I will post, or repost rather, this topic. But that's really all I have to say for prompt number 21. And I hope that somebody got something out of this and kind of can see what I'm saying without thinking that I'm totally off my rocker, because I really tried to keep it, really, I'm a sane person. I thought about this, really. So take it for what it's worth with a grain of salt. And this is RedYume and Elune signing off.